Oh my gosh. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Jolene's Happy Time Craftcast. I am Joleen, and I'm very excited to welcome you to today's very special episode of the Happy Time Craftcast. Before I introduce our guests, there's just a couple things that I want to chat about. The first thing is, I have the most amazing friends and neighbors here in my small town. It happens a lot that they'll call and they'll say, we have some books, we have some paper, we have these things that maybe you can use in your artwork. Can I just drop them off at your house? And of course, I say yes. And of course, I probably don't need one more thing, but I just am so curious, that I want to see what it is. So today, Renee called yesterday, I think, and she said, I'm getting rid of some art books. Would it be okay if I drop them off? And I was like, yeah, it'll be awesome if you did. So I've got a great big box. I haven't had a chance to go through it yet, but here are just some of the treasures that were inside. If you are listening and you can't see what I'm holding up, I am currently holding up Van Gogh and the Colors of the Night, which of course, lovely coffee table book. But when I take off the dust jacket, the book board, it's amazing. And so I'm very, very excited about that one. She gave me a Michelangelo sculpture book, which is also exciting, but the one that I am the most excited about. So Irving Harper is a pioneer and one of the first who really inspired me to work in paper. And his book on paper sculpture landed on my porch today. I mean, if you can see this, this is an owl and he is sculpted out of paper. So I'm really excited to look at some of these ideas. And there's one idea inside. Those are eyeballs made out of paper. And I have a child, Charlie, the death metal drummer, who is always saying, Mom, make me something weird, make me something dark. I'm like, okay, I got an idea now. So thank you to Renee. Thank you to Irving Harper for the inspiration. And just thank you so much to my friends and neighbors who know what I'm up to and they bring things to the farm and drop them off. So very exciting. And I'm so grateful. The next little announcement I have before I bring out today's guest, who is something of a big deal. I'm not sure if I remembered to tell you on our last show that I did apply to be one of the artists at the Minnesota State Fair. It's the juried part, the fine arts collection is what I applied to. There were 3,000 people that applied, and there were 296 of us that were accepted. So my large paper sculpture that is 44 inches in diameter, made out of sculpted book paper, will be on display at the Fine Arts Building at the Minnesota State Fair. So next week, I'm going up for a fancy party with all of the other artists. We have our opening night reception. So I'm very excited. I'm super excited to be a part of such a great group. And then what I'm really hoping to do and manifest is the Minnesota State Fair has this awesome program. It's called 12 Artists for 12 Days for 12 Hours. And every year there are 12 artists during the course of the Minnesota State Fair who are in the Fine Arts Building as their workshop and gallery/studio. And they just work there in and amongst the people for 12 hours a day. And you don't apply to do that, you are selected. So I would very much like to meet the person who curates that so I can be like, hey, my name is Joleen, and I'd really like to sculpt some books for 12 hours one day during the Minnesota State Fair. So putting that out into the universe, because I certainly believe that you attract what you think about. And so I would love that opportunity. So anyway, that's all the things that are going on with me. And I'm sure I'll have some other updates as we keep going about what's going on here at Big Raven Farm. Okay, so now today's guest. So friends, if you are on social media, and I'm sure many of you are, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, all the places, I am sure you have seen, admired, and enjoyed content created by today's guest. I'm totally fangirling because I just love her so much. And I invited her to be on the show quite a while ago, and schedules and stars just finally aligned, and she's here. So, Kate Rebecca Leach is today's guest. She is a UK-based watercolor artist and the founder of Asoldo Designs. Her nature-inspired gold-embellished art began during lockdown in a converted art Deco cinema. She has sold work in over 35 countries, built a huge following on social media. She leads art retreats just like I do. And she published her first book in 2024, Creative Abstract Watercolor. If you don't have this, you need it because it's amazing. And she has a very special announcement when I pull her forward here in just a second. So I know you will do a really great job of welcoming Kate Rebecca Leach to the Happy Time Craftcast. Here she is. Hi, Kate.
Hi, I'm blushing. What an intro. Thank you so much.
You are welcome so much. And I am so glad that you are here. I have been a fan and a follower, especially on TikTok, and maybe even like Kate, I think that when I found you, you maybe had 100 people on there. Like I was an early adopter. Like I hit the follow button like the second your content passed my eyeballs. What has all of this been like for you?
Oh, a bit of a whirlwind, to be honest. So my background is I studied textile design and surface pattern, more years, 20 plus years, more than I'd like to mention. And then probably like loads of us, life gets in the way. And, I kind of went and got a corporate job and, worked in marketing and retail. And it's only really in lockdown 2020 that I rediscovered my love of painting. And fast forward 5 years, I've left my corporate job.
Okay.
I've written not one, but 2 books. So if you haven't, I'll talk about that, I'm sure, later. But my second book comes out very soon. I finally, having studied textile design 20 years ago, I've designed 2 collections of fabric that have been sold all over the world. I've got to teach all over the world. I'm off to Greece this month for amazing Wandering Women's Retreat. So yeah, my life has been transformed by art, and whether it's manifesting, whether there's some being out there looking down on me, but I thank my lucky stars for the most amazing journey that I've been on in the last few years.
Kate, that is quite a tale, for 5 years, that is really quite amazing. And, the other thing I would just like to add to like what you say about yourself, and I know this part's hard to say, but friend, you are so talented and you have I know a lot of folks are listening and they cannot see, but when your work crosses my social media feed, I stop and I am just like, teach me, show me. I am a sponge. I must absolutely learn this. And it's not just, I think for me, what really like attracted me to your work is I am a messy maker. I am not much of like realism is lost on me. Like I can't draw a cat. You know what I mean? Like I can't do that kind of stuff. But your abstract design, like I can do that. I can do a line, I can do a blob, I can do a leaf.
Honestly,
I can do that stuff.
I believe that anyone really can. My work is, I call it abstract watercolor. It's not always abstract. Sometimes I'm painting flowers or seascape, but it's a bit of an abstract mindset because I was told at school that I couldn't draw. I couldn't draw a bowl of fruit. I couldn't draw a dog, or certainly not a person. So
a bowl of fruit, no way.
I kind of dabbled in, I was a real maker at university. So I worked with like silicone sealant, like you'd use in your bathroom. I was molding and piping plastic. I was working with metal. I was never a kind of traditional artist. So when I picked up my paintbrush again in lockdown, in kind of COVID times, that first question was, what am I going to paint? And I was I love decoration and embellishment. I love working with color. I'm really inspired by going out on a walk and seeing beautiful, the glory of nature. But actually, how do I put that into a piece when I can't faithfully recreate a beautiful flower that I pick in the garden? So it was kind of finding something that allowed me to have fun and splash paint about and embrace happy accidents. So don't worry, if you're messy, my style of work will absolutely suit you down to the ground.
Oh, 1000%. And I would say too, so last night, I've had this book for a long time. Like I bought it in 2024. Like
Thank you so much.
you're very welcome. I enjoyed it. But I did one of like the little lessons last night in preparation for today. And one of the things that I could not help but notice is oftentimes you use a limited color palette.
Yeah.
Can you talk to us a little bit about that? Like, what's the why there?
So started painting in lockdown. It was really a way for me to manage anxiety. It was, COVID was a terrible time for a lot of people around the world, and we were stuck indoors. I lived in this gorgeous apartment, but I didn't have a garden. I was kind of like, oh my God, I just need kind of something to do to fill my time, something that wasn't baking cookies, basically, or banana bread. So I just grabbed an old set of watercolors. And so when I started, I was very limited. We couldn't go to stores or shops. So I had a very limited color palette. And I soon realized, which I think a lot of people have put off watercolors, because it's very easy to make mud, that you mix a couple of different colors and you think, oh, that's really quickly become brown. But I really, a bit like cooking, I'm terrible at following a recipe. I want a pinch of this and a bit of that. So I found that I really wanted to mix my colors.
Okay.
But I didn't want to I still wanted to keep some vibrancy and some interest. So I happened upon a bit of a good scheme, which was working in a really limited color palette. I subsequently know through researching for book one and my second book, it's called an analogous palette. So it basically means that I'm working in the same area in the color wheel. So if I'm working in blues and greens, I know whatever blues and greens and teals and forest and mint and aqua, they're all going to be quite harmonious. You can see, for those of you watching and rather than listening, you can see that I've got my blues and greens behind me.
It's
again, if I'm working in a warmer section of the color wheel, purples and pinks and orange, I know broadly that those colors are going to work really beautifully together. So I think it was born from sheer, I'm not sure, I'm not a technical watercolorist, so I probably break all of the rules. I always say at my workshops, I'm a bit of a maverick. I will use white watercolor, which I know a lot of people won't, but I mix and change and play and experiment, and I embrace the happy accidents. But I just think for me, working in, whether it be blues and greens or pinks and purples or yellows and oranges, I just know that's going to feel really cohesive and work really beautifully together. So it was kind of born from necessity.
They absolutely do. And I follow other artists like Estee McLeod, if you know Estee.
Her work's amazing.
I know her,
what a fan.
Everything she says is like a prophecy, I'm just like, oh my God. But she too is like limited color palette, and I love and enjoy her. I'm trying to get her here as well. And she talks about limited color palette. And I think that for people like me, I use the cover of books. I use book paper. Like, I don't really have in my artistic, the stuff I make, I can't really blend, the colors. They are what they are. And so sometimes I'm afraid of color because in my mediums, I can't make one.
So don't let that hold it back, because it's almost a self-fulfilling prophecy. I know, and I have people at my workshops. I do a lot of workshops out here in the UK, and I do art retreats overseas. I'm hoping to offer some online content to everyone that's not in the UK soon. But I'm like, don't be scared of color. Just kind of go with it and play. At university, I was told I had a poor grasp of color. And I think sometimes those things can stay with you, something you can't draw as a child, or you have a poor grasp of color, scared me and put me off. Now, whether I've matured into it, but actually now color is something that a lot of people comment on in my work. And that's one of my most regularly asked questions is, how do you mix your colors? Because I don't often use colors straight from the pans. I mix them together.
Right. Well, and I think that the limited color palette is actually, for me, it's been liberating, freeing. I play more because I'm not as worried about mud. I also, so second question. So, like last night in your lesson that I did, the 4 colors that were just kind of recommended as a guide were Winsor Newton.
Yeah.
I didn't have those, and so I just used something else. But my listeners and the folks here today, we love to know brand. We just tell us what to buy and help.
I'm all about, some women have shopping addictions for clothes and shoes. My shopping addiction is 100% art materials.
Yes, of course. I understand.
I'm really lucky that now I've built this kind of lovely following, and I've got this big community, certainly on my Instagram. Lots of brands reach out to me and say, hey, I'd love you to try our paints or our pens. Or so, you know, Winsor & Newton, I worked at an art store when I was kind of 15, 16. It was my first job. So Winsor & Newton probably traditionally was a brand that I always use. And I do go back again and again to Winsor & Newton. That said, and I think in the book, every one of the 16 projects in the first book, I say, these are the colors I use, but you don't have to use those. If I'm using blues and greens, but pinks and purples really speak to you, or you're looking at the colors of your dining room and you say, actually, I want sage green and I want warm ochre, browny, goldy colors, go for that. The same way with paint brands, you know, I use Winsor & Newton. I also use Daniel Smith, beautiful American brand, incredible granulating colors. I've got a set. I was very lucky that I was offered to pick 24 colors, and my God, I was like a kid in a candy store. It was amazing. But I love Daniel Smith. I love Kuretake. I use, which are a Japanese brand, very reasonably priced. Love those. De La Rowney. I've used The Art of Soil, so watercolors made from natural pigments from the earth. I'm always saying, use what you have. So when I was in lockdown, and it was only that I was upcycling a bedside table and I had a paintbrush in my hand, probably 20 years since I'd had a paintbrush in my hand at university. And I just looked at my partner and said, why don't I do this anymore? And it was a real lightning strike, pivotal moment. And I just found there was this, you know, I didn't even use watercolor at uni, so I don't really know where these watercolors are from, but they were a little student set of watercolors, very limited, kind of your primaries and a few extras, maybe 8 colors. And I think I used an eyeshadow brush to start with because I didn't even have a paintbrush at home. Obviously, I soon got online and started ordering some materials, but I just used what I had.
That's incredible.
You know, and
I mean, that's also like quite inspiring too, right? Like use what you have. And because I think that, you know, like Winsor Newton, Daniel Smith, like some of those brands for some of us they feel like really expensive, you know, like one tube is like $12 or whatever. And I think it's hard to like say, okay, today I'm going to spend, you know, $80 on 8 colors, right? When so many of us already have supplies that we might not be using.
You know what, you can kind of, I honestly believe, I always say, if you're going to splurge on anything in watercolor, make sure you get the best watercolors you can. So student quality won't give you the vibrancy, it won't give you the same kind of textures because there's just less pigment. It's got more filler in it. Whereas if you have the artist quality, that said, there's a project in book 1 and there's some color recipes in my second book, and you take 3 colors and you take a dark and a light, and I show you how to make 30 colors from that. So actually, you know, if you were thinking of starting watercolors, there's also a page, sorry to hop on the book, but Payne's
No, that's okay.
The beautiful blue gray color is, anyone that follows me will know I'm a bit obsessed with kind of blue gray, indigo, Payne's gray color.
Payne's gray, yes.
There's a page in the book and I do a full piece painted in Payne's gray. And so I just had that one tube and I mixed it into 4 different dilutions. So a very loose light, almost became a very pale blue. And then a really, really thick, kind of creamy, thick pigmented version, which almost looked black, and a couple in between. So actually, even if you decide that you want to buy your 3 primary colors and then you treat yourself to a white, and I would say a Payne's gray instead of a black, you can really intermix a lot of colors from that. So I'm very lucky. People will often say, oh, you've got hundreds of watercolors, which I have. But do I stick to the same?
True, right?
Do I stick to the same 6 or 8 colors a lot of the time? Yes. You know, absolutely.
So, okay. All right, so now we will have a logistical question, right, listeners? And
Yeah.
our logistical question is, okay, so you're mixing up all of these colors. What are you mixing them in? And like, how do you keep it? Like, what is the vessel, the tool, the tray? Like, what is all of that in so that you're not wasting it?
So watercolor is fantastic. When I started in lockdown and I had that little set of watercolors and an eyeshadow brush, I just had a little ceramic plate that I was
Okay.
mixing my colors in. I've seen
Okay.
people use little egg cups. If they wanted to mix like a quantity of a color, you could mix it
Yeah.
up in a little egg cup. You know,
Mhm.
I very often for my workshops, I teach groups up to 16. So we have plastic pallets. They work out, you know, a pound or two each, so like a dollar or two in the States.
Yes. Yes.
So you don't have to spend huge amounts of money on really, you know, have I treated myself in the past or for birthdays and Christmas to beautiful handmade ceramic pallets? Yes, I love supporting small businesses and
Yes.
buying handmade, but can you absolutely make do with a kind of, you
Yep.
know, dollar store kind of hobby
Mhm.
craft, you know,
Mhm.
plastic palette? Absolutely. And the
And Kate,
great
if I
thing,
don't use
well,
it all, can I keep it? Like if I don't use it all, everything that I've mixed, can I
well,
keep it for my next session?
you absolutely can. And this is
Okay.
the thing. I would like to think as a person, I'm quite generous, but absolutely when it comes to art materials, I'm quite thrifty. And the
Me
thing
too.
that I absolutely love about watercolors, so they come in various different formats. So you can have tube paint or you can have pans, the little solid bricks of
Yes.
paint. Now, all those pans is dried tube paint. So
Yes.
I have a set of pans and then I fill them up with tubes. But the great thing is you activate that paint with water. So, you
Mhm.
know, you dip your brush in some water, you activate those paints and you paint with them. So if I mix a load of colors in my palette,
Mhm.
at the end of the day, you know, I'm a woman of a certain age. I've got a very busy life. I often get halfway through a painting and there'll be a phone call and knock at the door. My partner will need me. Something's going on.
Yes. Yes.
And that paint will dry in the palette. Now, if I was using acrylic, that would be dried and
Right.
that would
And
be
gone.
gone. That would be
Yep.
peeled out and thrown in the bin. Whereas absolutely with watercolor, you come back, that's just dried, you take your wet brush and you reactivate that paint and it works perfectly. So
We
if I'm painting
we
over
love that.
days and days, I
Yes.
can just keep coming back. I've also been known if someone's you mixed a really beautiful palette in a workshop and
Oh
you know
yeah.
the end of the workshop, I hate washing paint down the drain.
Oh
So
yeah.
absolutely, I will stack all the palettes, take them home, and often if we've had an underwater class and there's loads of blues and greens, I will
Yes.
just dip on those palettes and I will just be mixing and matching between those colors. So it's really thrifty. I use blues and
Yeah.
greens a lot, but my reds and purples are probably the same half pans that I had from my first set of professional
Right.
watercolors in May 2020. So if
They
you imagine,
do.
I'm
Yes. They
painting a
do
lot.
indeed last for sure.
I
Okay,
really do.
so thank you for all of that. We love that. Like we love being just sent down the road of, you know, you have the expertise and you have done like like so we're just gonna listen to you
Well, I
and
don't
not
know everything, but there's been a lot of trial and error. So I'm
right.
hoping
Thank you
I
for
can
your
spend
trial and
money.
error.
Yeah, I
Exactly.
can spend money on
Exactly.
the really expensive brushes and then say, actually, this one brush,
Yes, for
synthetic, not
sure.
that expensive, that's the one that I love the most. So I
So
hope that I share that with people.
So Kate, what about paper? Like, do you like it all? Are you hot press? Are you cold press? Are you like, which one brings you the most joy?
So with water, you know, I have sample packs. So there's a few brands that I have really fallen in love with, and a paper merchant gave me these sample packs. So I
Yeah.
always, at my workshops and when I'm meeting people and showing people the different papers, hot press is that super smooth. So if I
Yeah.
was doing very fine botanical illustration or I was doing portraiture, you don't want the lumps or bumps or the grain.
Yep.
You want it to be super, super smooth.
Like
For
it's been
me,
ironed. Yes.
yeah, you know, for
Mhm.
me, I'm that's not my love. It's
Yeah.
I love, you know, a bit like me, I've got my lumps and my bumps, and that's what makes me special and myself. So, you know,
Sure, sure. I love
I
that.
love all the texture of
Mhm.
so I love so hot press is completely smooth. Cold press is got kind of a medium grain texture, and then rough has got really kind of chunky texture. So when the pigment of that paint hits the paper, the pigment kind of swirls into the grains, and you get these incredible textures, and often kind of mirrors kind of like a granulating paint. So for me, a lot of my work is done on, if I'm doing a piece. So sorry for you that can't see, but I'm holding up a lot of workshops. I demonstrate on 300-gram cotton cold press paper or rough paper. So a little bit of texture. There's brands like Bockingford that I really love, or Saunders. Arches, if that's how you say it, or Arches. There's various different pronunciations.
Yes, we would say Arches. Yeah,
I would say Arches. It's very, it is expensive paper. It's a real treat paper for me. If I'm doing a commission or I'm painting, spending a lot of time on a piece, I might use that. But for day to day, any good textured 300-gram watercolor paper will work.
I always tell people, like, the way that I remember it is like hot means you've ironed out all of the texture and lumps, and it's going to be super, super smooth. And if it's cold, then you're going to have a little bit of that fun texture. When I was following your lesson last night in preparation for today, I have in my stash, it's almost like
a handmade paper.
Yes, it's like handmade paper. Yep. It's really cottony. It's like super chunky. And it was really fun because the paint stayed right where I put it. Like, it didn't roll. It didn't. And I followed your masking steps. I did all the things. I, made it into a quadrant. I followed the directions. And then I got to embellishment, which leads me to something, Kate, we have talked on the show so many times about white gel pens. And we are
it's always a hot topic.
It's always a hot topic. My friend Barb, now she said that she got lucky with Mart color, that they last and that they, keep working time and time again. So I'm still testing, but what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on the elusive white gel pen that works one time and then it's basically in the bin, as you say?
Oh, white gel pens, are the bane of my life. Again, I get asked this question. I obviously in my books, I have a full chapter on materials. So I go through paints, pens, inks, papers, masking, you name anything I use. I don't gatekeep, and I share everything.
Yes.
But the question I always get asked is, what do we do about white pens?
Yes.
So I have used jelly roll pens. I've used the kind of alcohol-based ones you shake up and then use those that kind of smell quite strong. I've tried dip pen. So for my black fine liners, I use an amazing brand called Tom Studio, which is a refillable fine liner, which I love because it means that I'm cutting back on single-use plastics.
Yes.
I have got an amazing, if any of your listeners are interested, I've got an amazing code for a discount for that you can put in the show notes. But
for sure,
Tom Studio is amazing. But I tried their white calligraphy pen dip ink that I thought might work. Unfortunately, it's beautiful on colored paper, black card, but it's not for over watercolors. So the best I found, there's two different pens that I return to again and again. And I hope the brands don't mind me saying they're never perfect. I've yet to find the perfect white pen, but I do a lot of dot work. Even in my logo, it's surrounded by a circle in little white dots. So for dot work, I do love a Posca paint pen. I use, I think it's a 0.7 mil nib, and shake those up, and that is perfect for dot work. But it's not quite as opaque for lines. So when I'm doing line work, I use a Uniball Signo pen. So I use the Signos a lot.
That's come up a few times. Others completely agree, but we are in, like, it is a fight and a chase to find one that you can use more than one time. I just feel like they dry out. They get, I've had so many where I feel like I've, gone over watercolor and then that one's done. So it's nice that we're not alone.
No, you're not alone. And it's really strange. I'd be the first to champion Uniball. I love their pens. They're silver, gold, copper. They do lots of colored metallics. they work beautifully. They are dreamy, especially the gold flows beautifully and lasts and lasts and lasts. I think it must be something to do with white ink is problematic across every brand that I've used. There are a few tips that I would say. So obviously keep that lid on the minute don't leave it on the side. If you're doing a bit of white and then you want to add some gold in, put that cap straight back on. I store my pens upside down. So I store them lid side down. So the ink, any ink, if the barrel isn't full of ink, the ink is staying in the nib. So it's not like, you know, drawing down the barrel of the pen and drying out. So I store them upside down. And then I do find sometimes if I grab a pen and I just give it a little hit on my hand, just to kind of push that ink back down into the nib. I know some people...
Kate, one more time. You are saying, just to clarify, you are saying point writing side down or writing side?
So writing side down.
Writing side down. Okay.
When I'm storing them,
because
writing side if you put that down. So if you imagine if this barrel is filled with ink, as that is, if it's half used, if I store it this way, you know, I don't know. This is just through trial and error.
Yeah.
Down the pen. But if it tends to be that if I store them upside down, the ink stays in that nib and it stays juicy and it doesn't dry out so quickly.
Well, and you know, it is like, I mean, I don't know that. I mean, I've talked to a lot of great artists. I've had so many, I mean, some are really great friends, and we talk about white pens all the time. Like, I feel
one of my most regularly asked questions is someone could invent. I said to Tom, I met Tom of Tom's Studio, and I was totally fangirling, but his pens are brilliant, and he does all these different colored inks. I said, if you can crack a white pen that works like watercolor, you will make your millions. You know, you will make a fortune because
you'll make at least 20 from Joleen, and you know, 20.
I'll have 100 straight off for my work. I was going to add one thing on paper before we move on. So I do use loose. I don't tend to work in a sketchbook, so I do work on loose sheets of paper. So my 300 gram. But for those of you that are watching, or I will describe it as well, for a lot of my final pieces, I use something called watercolor artboard. So all that is watercolor paper that is adhered to mount board. So it's very, if you can hear that, it's a nice bit of ASMR. It's a really rigid board that's just got a nice cold press watercolor paper adhered to the top surface. And it means that when I'm working really, really wet with some of my big pebble shapes or my stripes, where I'm using a lot of water, you're not getting any kind of rippling or wrinkling of the paper. So that's a brand called De La Rowney. Again, it's in my book, or if people want to message me on social media, you know, I've got all my links in. I think you've very kindly popped them all in the show notes.
Oh, we've put them. Yep, we've put them everywhere. We want everyone to you.
Artboard is brilliant. If you're working on a piece and you really care about it, and you know, you want something where it stays beautifully flat, artboard is lovely. In addition to
it looks and sounds lovely. And even in like the lesson that I did in preparation for today, I think it said, you know, paper or artboard, and I mean, they do look absolutely decadent, you know, and lovely. But thank you for that. So I do have another question, and I think it's going to lead us into kind of your bigger announcement. So watercolor, yes, it's kind of your passion and your love, but you've got other passions and loves, and those are all coming together in the culmination of your next book, right?
Yes.
Called Creative Abstract Mixed Media. There she is holding it up. Of course, it's got some gold on it. You know, that is your calling card, of course.
That was the one thing I said to my publisher. I'd like to think I was quite easy writing the books, but I said to them, I will fight you to the death for gold foil on this cover.
So tell us what we can expect in Creative Abstract Mixed Media. What's coming up in book 2, and where can we get it, and when can we get it, and tell us all the things.
Okay. Gosh, so exciting.
Okay.
So when book 1 came out, I'd never thought about being an author. A publisher kind of slipped into my DMs on Instagram and said, hey, we love your work. Have you considered writing a book? And I said, me? what? I thought maybe it was a scam, or, you know, it was something a bit dubious.
Right.
But it was, we had a conversation, and book one, I don't have children, but it was like having a baby. It
I
was a
bet.
lot of hard work, but it was the
Yes.
proudest moment of my life when the book came
Yes.
out. And I was really proud of it. And it's 16 watercolor projects, and it's all of my materials and all of my techniques, and wet on wet, wet on dry, embellishments. And it was brilliant to share that with the world. But obviously, as an artist, I like to try new things. And, you know, Joleen, I discovered you from your beautiful book folding on TikTok.
Yes.
But people want different things, and people want to see you try new things and change things up. So I wrote the book. And obviously, it's a very long lead time writing a book. So I'd finished the book, and I was starting experimenting, and I started working with collage. And very much like you, we were having a quick chat before the call about recycling and reusing. So I would create in workshops, I'd have all these demonstration sheets where obviously there was no composition, there was bits of color mixing at the top, and there was some technique on one side, but there were beautiful single leaves or flowers or squares or beautiful pebble shapes.
Yes.
I thought, well, what can I do with all of those? So I started chopping them up, and I started collaging, and I got really excited about it as a kind of brilliant way of, you know, that piece didn't quite work out. Do you know what? There's bits of beauty in there. So let's chop it up and change it around. So I started collaging. I remember back at university using crackle glaze and crackle paste. And I started getting really excited about not only watercolors, but, you know, I think the working title for the book 2 was Watercolor and More. Like, what can we do once we've done watercolor? And we're like, do you know what? I've got a really good solid foundation of watercolor technique. What next? What else can we do? So I kind of started talking to my lovely publishing director, and I said, I'm talking about the book, and I'm sharing all this work online, and people are saying, oh, collage, is it in the book? Or crackle glaze, is it in the book? And I say, oh no, I wrote the book 6 months ago. You know, it's kind of, obviously it's a long lead time for it to come out. So the idea was that book 2 was creative abstract mixed media. So it was all of the beautiful, so you don't have to buy loads of new kits. You've got your watercolors, your base set that you would use before, but there's loads of extra things that you can do with it. So there's a chapter on collage. So I've got a couple of tricks. I find glue really messy, and I find it annoying. So I'm not going to give it away. You'll have to buy the book. But
Which is fair.
I'm such a tease. But I love my collage to be kind of really neat. So I've tried loads and loads of different adhesives. So I found like the way to have these perfectly flat, beautifully flush pieces adhered to your paper. So I did collage. I've done crackle glaze. I've used cling film, or I think you call it in saran wrap, or like plastic wrap in the States. So that to create pebble shapes. I've used embroidery, so embroidering and sewing into my very basic. I'm not much of a sewer, but you can really, even with cross stitch and running stitch, you can add all your metallic embellishments with thread instead of pen or ink, which is really fun. I did some printmaking, so anything from printing with little erasers. So I would chop up erasers and carve into them and use them like a rubber stamp, to printing fallen autumn leaves, pressed flowers, using salt to get beautiful textures, and using alcohol to get really beautiful, dropping not wine or vodka, the fun kind of alcohol, but if you put rubbing alcohol into wet watercolor, it does amazing things. So
my gosh, I'm smiling, nodding, shaking my head, just because, Kate, the first book is so good that, I cannot wait for the second one. Friend, I love this thing. I love the ideas. And again, folks who know me, I'm messy. I'm a messy maker. I have said a million times, you want me as your Pictionary partner because I can guess. I once guessed Matterhorn, but I can't draw a cat. I'm good with words, but your book makes me feel like I can.
Honestly, I really believe, at my workshop recently, I had a professional art teacher as one of the attendees, which felt quite precious. And I had a lovely lady who must have been, she's very glamorous. She was maybe in her mid 60s. And she said to me, I haven't painted since I was at school. And I will be rubbish. I've just come with my friend. Don't worry about me. Don't expect anything.
Yeah.
Honestly, her piece was one of the best ones. The way that I teach, I like to think that the way I work is really accessible. So
Yes.
I'm all about layering it up. So it's a bit like
Yes.
a brilliant, like a nice outfit that actually you've got your base layer of wet on wet. Then
Yep.
you've got your next layer, which will be your wet on dry. And then you've got your third layer, which will be your embellishments. So it might be your little black dress, your beautiful little jacket, and then your embellishments.
And your pearls or your
scarf, your necklace, your jewelry.
Yes.
So because you're layering these up, you've got multiple bites of the cherry to allow that piece to come alive.
So I'm so impatient. So where can I get it? Where can I get it?
Okay.
Where is it? How can I get that to add to my collection? Because I must have it.
Well, look, Joleen, I can't offer this to everyone, unfortunately, but for you, I will definitely get you sent an advance copy so you can have a little nose through and tell me what you think.
So
but the official completion date is the 7th of October.
Okay, 7th of October.
But it's open for pre-orders. So I realise that you'll have listeners from all over the place.
We do.
So if you would love a signed copy with some extra goodies, you can order it through my website, which is just isoldodesign.com. It's in all of the show details.
Yes.
So you can find that. It's on my Etsy shop. And I think we'll talk later on. I've got a little treat, a little discount for people. You can order the book through me, through a signed copy. If you're in the States, you know, Barnes and Noble and all good bookshops in the UK, W.H. Smith's, Waterstones, independent book retailers, obviously Amazon. If you want free shipping, you want it in a hurry, Amazon will be selling it. But what I will say is, I believe that although it comes out on the 7th of October, I might be a little bit sneaky and might be getting my book stock a little bit earlier. So I'm really hoping by mid-September, I will be pushing all of those copies out and sending them out into the world. And when people buy them from me, they get a little postcard, they get a few little extra goodies in there just to say, thank you for supporting a small business and an independent artist rather than a huge, giant website.
We love all of that. And so what I hear you say is that pre-sale is now. So you can order it today. It might be fulfilled a little bit later, or it will be fulfilled later. And if they order from you, there are some goodies. And who doesn't love a goodie?
Exactly. Totally understand with shipping costs and things.
Yes,
totally understand people buying in the country they're in. And do you know what? Wherever you buy it, I absolutely love when I've sent book one, I've sent, I almost feel like I should have a scratch map because I'm like, lots of lovely people in the US, Canada, Chile, Japan, Australia, New Zealand, Europe, it's everywhere. A copy to the Maldives, it's amazing where I get, I haven't gone to the Arctic yet, but
it absolutely speaks to me. And I know so many others. And the word for sure is it feels accessible. And I've been working my way through the lessons and I love it.
I'm so glad.
And I just feel a little bit like, because this is going to sound so terrible. I was there early, Kate. Like I was there before like other people were there. And I feel like I found you and loved you like from the beginning. And I feel like I've been with you while all of these wonderful things have been happening. And so I feel vested.
I remember
I'm so excited.
April 2020, and I had, I'd set up this Instagram page, and I remember thinking I had nothing else to do. We were all locked down. I was painting. I was posting twice a day. And I thought, if I could get to 1,000 followers by Christmas, that would be amazing. And I think every time 2 people followed me, 3 people unfollowed me. And it was one of those things. It was a real bumpy ride.
Of course.
And then someone said to me the other day, how many followers have you got now? I was like, a lot. And they were like, well, no, how many? And I was like, a lot. And I absolutely appreciate, I realize, I always feel really sad when people say to me, I posted a piece that I did from your book and only got 30 likes on Instagram. And I say to them, do you know what? If you were sat in your house and 30 people were in that room
Right.
applauding
And said,
you
great.
and
Yeah,
telling
that's
you how amazing your work is, you know, so I never, whether I've got 100 or 100,000 or more, like
yes.
I have so many, honestly, I think social media gets such a bad reputation,
Yeah.
but I kind of, if it might sound cheesy, but like my art tribe. And I've got these people that have become brilliant friends that I've
Yes.
met at workshops and retreats, that cheer me on, that have bought the book, that have my art in their homes,
Mhm.
that, you know, ladies from all over the world that have made fabric from my dresses from my fabric. And there's pictures of them. You know, there was an amazing woman in California that was wearing this bright aqua blue sundress, and she took a photo of her at home next to her pool. And from rainy UK in London, I was like, that looks like the most glamorous thing in the world. But
Right.
people are amazing, and the support I've got from people is, but
Well,
you know,
Kate, I
it's
agree with you. I mean, I think it does get a bad rep sometimes, but what I truly believe is that, like, my real friends, I mean, my real friends are also my internet friends. Like,
yeah,
they wear two hats at the same time. And, great things have come out of social media for me and my business, but really great things have come out for me in my relationships with people. And, I think that when you find love, you find it, right?
yeah.
Like, and it could be your friends or your partner or whatever. But I have no judgment about how I found them. I'm just so
Oh,
glad I
yeah.
have them,
I've got lovely,
Mhm.
generally ladies, you know, I think it's about 90% female on
Yeah,
my
yeah, me
Instagram,
too.
but I love it when chaps get in touch as well and get involved with the art. But I've made kind of firm friends. The
Yes,
art
me
retreat company
too.
I work with is American. So I've got friends all over America that are always like, when are you going to come over? You should come and stay with me. But I've got a artist friend that we kind of support and cheerlead for each other. She's in
Yes.
Australia. We might never meet, but she will be the first person to message me if my fabric comes out or my book comes out or I've done some licensing work and I announce something exciting. She is there cheering me on and I'm there right back,
Yep,
you know, doing the same for her. And I think
absolutely.
that's so, it fills my cup, you
Yeah,
know,
it's joyful, right? It's
especially now
joyful
I've gone from a
because
hobby to
yeah,
a
a
career.
business.
It's
Yeah.
really, it's people say, oh, have you lost the love of it? Now you're doing it for a job. No.
That's great. Well, we do have a few questions that, one of our segments here on the show is we do have people send in questions because they know they're going to get your ear for a second here.
Of course.
So Emily wrote in and she said that your work feels so joyful. How do you
Oh,
hold on to that joy during tough or uninspired seasons, which kind of lines right up with what we were talking about?
yeah. So for me, you know, I've had a really kind of interesting, bumpy journey, you know, 20 years of not creating at all, other than the odd birthday cake or birthday card.
Yeah.
Um, and for me, art was a way of coping in COVID. So that really was the darkest time. I was very scared and very anxious, like a lot of people.
Mhm.
And for me, you know, I always joke and say, I don't do yoga, I don't do Pilates, but art is my form of mindfulness. So
Yep.
for me, if I'm, you know, I've gone from having, I'm very lucky, I've got a spare bedroom studio, but I haven't got a huge space, you know, it's my
Yeah.
little tiny corner of loveliness. But I can be sat in my spare room studio with a cup of tea and I'll have a podcast or an audiobook on and I'll just let the paint flow. And for me, that is my form of mindfulness.
It
You
sounds
know,
good. Like, I even think I made a noise. I was like, oh,
uh,
just
you know,
so
I'm a woman of a certain age. I'm perimenopausal. I, you know, have struggled in the last few years with a bit of anxiety. And actually, my happy place is when I'm painting. So my brain is completely consumed in music or a podcast or
Mhm,
an
mhm.
audio book. And then my hands and my physicality
Sure.
are working away. So, you know, it's
Well, and
lovely to.
the scientists, Kate, they've weighed in. They've weighed
Mm,
in and they've told us that, you get into a state of flow and your mind can relax when your hands are busy.
yeah,
And like the scientists have hooked us up to machines and it's a fact.
yeah.
It's just an absolute fact. Like, if the joy itself wasn't enough, it most definitely helps the brain in all kinds of ways. So yeah, I totally agree with you. We have another question, and this one is from Nina. So Nina says or asks, what advice would you give to someone who wants to explore mixed media but feels overwhelmed by all of the options? I think her question kind of is, where do you start?
Yeah. Well, of course, pre-order my book, because that will be, it's a beginner's guide. But I would say keep it simple.
Yes.
It's
Use what
really
you have.
use what you have. So my journey, my work is officially mixed media because I use watercolors, but I use gel pens and inks over the top.
Yes.
So my first foray was going for just having watercolors. As you can tell, I'm very obsessed with jewelry and accessories. So my first was watercolor, and then I added in metallic inks because I really love those kind of jewel kind of embellishments. So the first thing in mixed media was I used watercolor with inks and pens,
Yes.
or it might be you've got some crayons or some oil pastels or pencils, so start with that. For me, my kind of entry into mixed media was having all of these pieces, these test sheets, experiments, workshop sheets that I thought, what am I going to do with these? I don't want to throw them away because there's areas which are lovely, but it's not a composition. I'm never going to sell it. I'm never going to make a print from it.
Right.
So I started cutting it up and collaging and, recycling my work, which then opened a whole new set of possibilities. So, watercolor, people say, oh, you have to work light to dark and you can't have a pink flower on a dark blue background. Well, you can with collage. You can have these gorgeous saturated dark background colors, and you can collage whatever you fancy over the top. So I think collage is a really nice entry point. And then I would say, start thinking about what you've got at home. So in the book, there's a saran wrap or cling film. There's a project that I use that to create beautiful pebble shapes and have this real beautiful abstract. Use salt, raid the kitchen cupboard. Have you got some rock salt? Have you got some fine salt? Sprinkle that into your watercolor and look at the textures and the beautiful kind of crystalline kind of shapes that forms. So mixed media doesn't have to be, really
all the things, right?
Yeah, if you want the printing fallen leaves, I bought a little roller and one tube of ink, and I just started printing things, anything corrugated cardboard or leaves or flower petals,
texture,
and just getting different textures. So mixed media doesn't need to feel, I think you think, oh God,
right. You need all the things, right? Well, and I would say that with that question posed to me, I would say build something or so like here's a project that I would recommend. So my dance space is using materials that were headed for the garbage. So this is a book that I made. And these are fabric samples because I have a friend who's an interior designer, and she was saying, hey, Joleen, we're going to throw away all of these sample books from our upholstery vendors. Do you want the fabric? And of course, I always say yes before I say no, because I don't know what I could do with it. But anyway, so this one was on kind of like one palette, right? Yeah. So my colors go together. So I cut them into strips, used recycled book board, put the fabric on top of the book board.
Amazing.
Used wallpaper samples because I was at Sherwin-Williams, and the guy was like, hey, I'm going to throw away these wallpaper sample books. Do you want them? Yes, absolutely. I want them. I don't know why, but I'll figure something out. And so I used wallpaper on the inside covers of my book. So for me, I would say mixed media too can be building a practical thing out of things that would otherwise be in the garbage. You teach yourself a binding stitch, and the only new piece of my little book here is my hot pressed watercolor paper. So I think that it comes in all kinds of forms, and you just have to dabble and try and play, quite honestly.
Honestly, I think part of the joy of art is going back to that childlike mindset of just experimentation. And I always, when people say that they worry about watercolor and it's really tough, I've had so many happy accidents. Some of my best designs are where I've smudged something, I've ripped something, invention. I've had to invent something because there's been a problem. So I've overcome every obstacle that could have happened because I've, lent my wrist into something. I've, torn it. I've done all of these things. So I think sometimes it's about playing and getting messy. And I had a beautiful design, a floral piece, and I smudged it with my hand, and there was a big red smudge. over the background of this beautiful white clean background.
Yeah.
Now, as it was, I ended up getting a little cotton bud, like a Q-tip,
Yeah.
and I did a polka dot background to this piece. Now, I never intended to have a pattern background.
Right.
It's one of my, I sell beautiful gold foiled greeting cards. It's one of my favorite designs, really popular. And I remember the art director, the people that produced them, had said, I picked that design because I love that background. And I thought, actually, that background was there because of a mistake. So really, there are no mistakes. They're just opportunities. So if Nina wants to get into mixed media, I would say, just get stuck in. What art supplies do you have? You know, do you have a needle and thread in your sewing kit? Could you do a little watercolor? And could you just start, instead of drawing lines of embellishment, could you sew in some lines of embellishment? Even if you, you know, secure the thread on the back with sticky tape, even if you're not a sewer, have a go. What does that look like?
Right. Have a go. I love that. Like, let's just try, let's just play. And honestly, you know, because, you know, I do a lot of art retreats. So I do like 26 a year because I
one day I will be there one day.
I know you will. I know it'll be so awesome. So in our retreats, sometimes what I observe in people is they'll say, how long is that going to take? And it's almost like that's the currency, like time is the currency. It's not like how much does it cost? It's like, how long is it going to take? And I think that for me, I like once I don't really care how long something takes, right? Like right now I'm doing on my work table. You'll have to visualize this. So my frame is 2 feet wide and 5.5 feet tall. So she's a big girl. And I have colored it, you know, covered it with background paper. And then I have cut circles of various different sizes, of course, out of reclaimed books. And they are, you know, 4 inches, 3 inches, 2 inches, 1. They're just all over the place. And then I've built risers so that my circle
really 3D effects.
So it's very 3D. It's very 3D.
Amazing.
And it's taken me a while to build, and it's humongous and heavy. And you know, somebody says, how long will it take? And I'm like, I absolutely do not know. Now, that does not mean I will not get a gold medal in bitching about it. You know, like, oh my God, what have I done? But I think that for some of us, when you let go of how long it takes, I mean, you can still complain about it, but the joy of doing it, you know, like I'm always glad when I do the hard ones. I'm always glad.
It's not the destination. Sometimes it's the journey. And did I enjoy painting it? You know, people often say, oh, your work looks really intricate. How long did that piece take? And I think they expect me to say a day or 2 days or 5 days or 4 hours. Whereas actually the thing I love, you know, I'm a busy woman as you are. And, you know, people, I don't even have kids to deal with, but people have got families and jobs and houses to run. And we're all pulled from pillar to post.
All the things, right? All the things.
The way I work, and you will know that from the project, is I work in layers. So actually you might do your wet on wet layer of your piece tonight after this call that you've got a little bit of time. So you might grab an hour as a busy woman. You might just do that, and then you might let that dry, and that might sit in your studio. And you know what? It's Wednesday today. Actually, on Saturday morning, you might make a cup of coffee and you've got you've got half an hour. So you might do a little bit of wet on dry kind of addition to that. And then on Sunday afternoon, and I always do it when my partner's watching the Grand Prix, or, you know, or he's out in the garden doing something, or he's gone out in the car and gone to the shops. I'll do a little bit of embellishment. I'll put the radio on. I'll do a little bit of embellishment. So actually for me, when can I grab little pockets of time? Even as a professional artist, I don't often get a whole day to sit and paint. That still feels like a luxury because I'm running a business like everyone probably, that you wear a lot of different hats and you have a lot of different responsibilities. So grab time when you can get it.
And Kate, to your point, like in preparation, I did my lesson yesterday, and then
I let it. Great for anyone that can't see it.
Thank you. And then I let it dry overnight. And then this morning when it was dry, I embellished just the details. I still have one more step to go, but I wasn't impatient because I walked away and I went to bed.
And you know what? The advantage to that is white pens, as much as there can be a little bit difficult, if there's any moisture in your watercolor at all, it does not like going over watercolor that's slightly damp. So I would always say, you know, it's tougher in workshops, but I'm like, let it dry completely before you then put your white gel pen over the top, because actually if it's damp, your white pen can go slightly pink if you've got a red watercolor underneath, and it's harder for that white to come out smooth. So perfect that you do it one day and then you embellish the next.
And I didn't have to like enjoy or challenge myself to be patient. Like I didn't even think about it, you know? So it was like, oh my gosh, it's ready for me to do the next thing. So there are some ways that we can trick by being just a little bit planful. And Ellen, thank you so much for your comment too about, you know, mixed medias for people who can't stick with one media and want to combine them all. I mean, absolutely. Like I love for me that there's no rules.
I really appreciate there's some people that got, you know, a lot of people is very kind and they say, oh, you've got a very distinctive style.
Yeah, you do.
We know it's you straight away. Even when I think I've done something really different, people say, oh, I instantly knew it was you.
Yeah.
But I couldn't just paint pebbles, or I couldn't just paint florals. I want to do pebbles and florals and houses. I want to do collage. I want to do crackle. I want to do plain watercolor. I want to do abstracts. I want to do slightly more figurative stuff. You know,
all the things. We want to do all the things.
I love Italian food, but I wouldn't want to eat Italian food every day.
Right.
You know, with my painting, I walk into the studio and think, what do I fancy doing today? So actually, you know, to that point, yeah, actually, if you don't want to necessarily stick to one thing, actually, it feels like a mixed media day today. It feels like if I don't want to make loads of mess, if I'm going out and I'm looking, I don't want to get covered in paint. Well, actually, I'll do some collage because it's, you know, I'm cutting shapes and arranging and playing, and that maybe feels a bit more mindful. Some days I really want to get stuck in and paint.
So, okay. So I cannot believe that we are like almost out of time. And I did even get to like our most favorite segment, but I'm going to ask you just a couple things there. But before I get to that, so Kate, what do they need to know about? So I will link in the show notes where they can get the book, and that it's on pre-order right now, and you're going to fill orders just as soon as you can. And then if they want the goodies, they will go to your website.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's a little treat that there's some extra goodies if you go there, and I will be sure, I promise, to link that in the show notes.
Perfect.
Awesome. And since we are the Happy Time Craftcast, you know, we have all of these questions, but there's just two that I want to ask you before we let you go. The first one is, because you're our first guest from the UK, so this might be different.
Oh, I feel honored. Thank you.
Yes, than our usual answers. And that is, so Kate, it's very serious, but what is the best kind of sandwich?
See, now I feel like I should be saying something iconically British.
No.
But to be honest,
you want the truth. You want the truth.
I've only been to the US once.
Okay.
But I love what you would call like a deli, like a lot of sandwiches in the UK are a bit thin. So I kind of, I suppose both of my favorite sandwiches are from different places in the world. So the first would be, I remember going to the iconic Cat's Deli in New York and getting like a Reuben's with like the sauerkraut and all the pastrami and melted cheese. And it was, I could barely get it in my mouth, but it was like the most amazing thing. So it would either be that, or when I went to Florence, they did these amazing focaccia sandwiches with kind of burrata, and, you know, basically it's cheese and meat and there's loads of filling and it's really oozy and probably very naughty. I like it.
Oh, so I love it.
I didn't know that was one of your questions. So I'm
that's like our most
real foodie. So.
Yeah. So last night I had a sandwich called like clean out the refrigerator because we have a retreat starting tomorrow and we had one last week. And so we have to clean out the refrigerator, make room for everything else.
Like a fridge raid.
Yeah. So I just started throwing stuff on there, which I mean, some of you might find absolutely disgusting. And granted, it's very Joleen-y. Like it just like there are like texture issues and like all kinds of things. But like I had a Hawaiian roll, which is basically candy. And then I put on shredded chicken and then pickled onions and jalapenos. Ooh, and then there was a little bit of guacamole left. And then Darren, Marsha, our house elf, brought us some sweet corn. So I threw that on there. So it was like corn and guacamole and onions. Chicken.
Do you know what? I think it's a bit like art. If those are all your favorite things, or you have all your favorite supplies, if you love them, just get them together. And
it was great. It was great. Although looking at it on my plate, you know, Darren was like, wow, babe, like, I think this is a new level even for you. And I was like, shut up, let me eat my sandwich. It was absolutely delicious. So we'll call that one the Joleen surprise. Like, I don't know how one would recreate it unless you had all of those particular leftovers. But okay, so one more though from our list that we always ask, that we have to know, Kate. So what brings you the most happiness?
Oh God, in life in general, that's a really broad one. I have
Yeah.
to say, art has changed my life, and I'm not just saying that because I'm on a creative, podcast. Um, I am, obviously my family, my amazing
Yes.
partner, he's a graphic designer and he helps me so much. I'm a bit of a technophobe. He does a lot of he helps me design my calendar and all my marketing bits and bobs. And, he is a joy. My family are amazing. Travel is something that I'm really passionate about. And actually, I'm not giving too much away, but I am working on a little book 3 proposal. But I find experiencing new things. I love travel because I can paint, I can try amazing food, I can be with family or friends. So I think something that really brings in all my loves is probably traveling. I'm meeting people, I'm trying new things, I'm being inspired. I take, the question one of your listeners asked earlier and said, how do you find inspiration and joy in sadder times? I go through my camera roll, I think about all of those amazing, the sunny days, the happy days, the days where I was somewhere amazing with friends, the color of that dress that I saw on a mannequin that I thought, I've got to swatch that color and find that, create that color palette. So for me, like, travel is something that brings together family and food and art and all the things that bring me a lot of happiness and joy.
It's such a great answer. And I completely agree with you. And, of course, my family, of course.
Yeah, that kind of goes without saying.
Yeah, I love those guys. That's amazing. I love those guys. But I think aside from them, I would say that, oh gosh, I'm getting a little choked up. I would say that, like, being with my community, being with my crafty friends, and just all of their energy and their interest and their support. I always say I just feel so shined up. I feel like, a lucky penny that got picked up and then just got a nice little shine.
Honestly, I'm going on retreat. I work with this amazing company called Wandering Women, and we're going to Greece in kind of 2.5 weeks. I'm literally on countdown. I'm so excited.
Yes.
And it's women only. And there's kind of 16, I think, of us on the trip. And I always cry when I get there, and I always cry when I leave, because I've made amazing new friends. I've had all of these new experiences, and it fills my cup. So actually, when I have that slightly grey, miserable day back in London in the winter and it's dark and it's cold, I think about those amazing things, and that's what inspires, that's where I bring that joy back into my work, because I think about those colours of the coast, or that boat trip that we went on, or that amazing delicious plate of food that we ate. I think, those colours were beautiful together. So it's keeping those. I always think, if you have an amazing experience, my partner always says to me, bottle it. If we're sitting watching a sunset somewhere, and he said, bottle that feeling, and when you're feeling a bit low, uncork that bottle and remember that and kind of tap in. So I've always made sure I've got my little bottles of joy there. Maybe
you will have to thank him for that analogy, because I love it so much. And before we say goodbye, just a couple of things. Barb completely agrees with Ellen about the mixed media. Also, Kate, the name of your Etsy shop, but I'll be sure to link it in the show notes too.
So I'm a Soldo design everywhere.
Yes, a Soldo design everywhere.
Soldo design, and I've got a little discount code for you, which for the Etsy shop. So if you use Craftcast, all in capital letters, you get 10% off the books, notebooks, greeting cards, art prints, whatever you can find on there.
Well, thank you, Kate. We appreciate that, don't we, friends? We love that. And then Teresa, thank you. She says she doesn't want it to end. The time has been really enjoyable. Teresa, you are the best.
Thank you, Teresa. What a sweetheart.
I know, right? Elsie says that Publix has some really good subs, which is awesome.
I know.
And Ellen too, really really our conversation today. Ellen, thank you so much for being here. Kate, oh my gosh, thank you so much for
Thank you for having me. What a dream. I thought, who's going to want to hear what I've got to say? But it's such a nice chat.
Lots of us. So thank you so much. And I know it's a different part of the day for you, but thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to be here. I am a big fan and I am rooting for you. And I love my book. I'll get the next one. And we just want to we want to stay in touch and we want to hear all the amazing things that happen. So thank you so much for being here. I'm so
Thank you.
grateful.
It's been absolutely a pleasure. And thank you to everyone that's kind of tuned in, because
Oh,
it's really been wonderful.
awesome. Well, our pleasure. And for those of you who would like to join me next time, Emily Victory will be with me on the 20th of August. And Emily is a math-minded painter. Can't wait to hear about that. Who blends geometry and art in bold acrylics. She's from Minnesota, just like me. And she DIYs with her husband and her sons. And she does all kinds of things with patterns and puzzles. Her work has appeared on HGTV, PBS, Twin Cities Public Television. She's spoken at major institutions. Her Emmy-winning Minnesota original episode also won PBS Most Viewed Award. So,
Wow.
oh my gosh. So Emily is with us on the 20th, and I can't wait to see you then. And again, thank you so much to Kate for being here today. And thank you to all of you. And until I see you again next time, I hope you stay super, super happy. Bye, everybody.
Bye.